Lessons 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7. Adding integers, subtracting integers, multiplying and dividing integers. First I can statement is that I can add integers. This is from section 1.5. In the chart it shows if the signs are the same, you find the sum of the absolute values. We know that adding two positive numbers will give us a positive. When we add two negative numbers, it gives us a negative. If the signs are different, we find the differences of the absolute values. Then we take the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. So in the first example, 7 plus negative 5 equals a positive 2 because the 7 is the greater whole number. Negative 7 plus 5 becomes negative 2 because 7 has the greater absolute value, but this time it's the negative number. If we're talking in the sense of a number line, when we're adding a positive number, we're going to be moving to the right. If we're talking about adding a negative number, take a look at example A. We want to add 1 plus negative 2. Well, if I look at those two numbers, I see that 2 has the greater absolute value. So that tells me that my answer is going to be negative. Now, if I find the difference between the two numbers, 1 compared to 2, they're 1 apart. So that gives me an answer of negative 1. If we look at example B, I know that 8 has the greater absolute value. Since that's the negative number, that will be my sign. So then I find the difference between 8 and 5, which is 3, giving me an answer of negative 3. Example C, I have two negative numbers. It's just like adding 2 plus 4, only I need to make sure that this time I have the negative with it, as it's a negative 6. Section 1.6, I can subtract integers. Subtracting a lesser number from a greater number is the same as finding how far apart the two numbers are on a number line. Subtracting an integer is the same as adding its opposite. Looking in the box, 3 minus 7 can also be written as 3 plus negative 7. That's something we're already familiar with. Whenever we see something such as 5 minus negative 8, then we know that we can make this minus a negative into a plus sign. What a lot of people will do is they'll go ahead and make this one big plus sign. Okay, let's look at example A for subtraction. Negative 7 minus 4. We could rewrite this as negative 7 plus negative 4. Looking at it in that form, we realize all we're doing is adding the two negative numbers. So when we add negative 7 and negative 4, we get an answer of negative 11. Example B, 8 minus negative 5. Remember from the last screen, if you see minus a negative, you can make that into one big plus sign, making that 8 plus 5, which is 13. And example C, negative 6 minus the negative 3. Again, we can make this into one big plus sign, and now we're adding negative 6 plus 3. So remember, when we talk about which one has the greater absolute value, that would be 6, meaning our answer will be negative, and we find the difference between 6 and 3, which would be negative 3. Let's evaluate this expression for the given value of the variable. 8 minus j for j equals negative 6. Evaluating, we're going to substitute the number in, so 8 minus negative 6. Notice that the negative 6 is in parentheses. When we insert a number, we need to make sure we include all signs that go with it. In this instance, we can go ahead and make this one big plus sign, making that 8 plus 6, which equals 14. Section 1.7, I can multiply and divide integers. On your notes you have two different spots. You can write I can multiply for one and I can divide for one. If the signs are the same when multiplying and dividing, the answer is positive. If the signs are different, the answer is negative. Two positive things make a positive. Two negatives hopefully lead to a positive solution. If one is positive and one is negative, usually the negative one draws the attention. Remember, these rules are different from adding and subtracting. On this chart, we're doing products on the left, quotients on the right. So for multiplication and division, the rules are the same. If both numbers are positive, we're going to get a positive number. In this specific example, 15. If one is negative, one is positive, it's a negative 15. And both negatives again become positive. For the quotient, a positive divided by a positive is a positive, which is how we get 3. One negative and one positive comes out to be a negative. And two negatives make a positive. Let's look at example A. Negative 6 times 4. We know 6 times 4 is 24. I see one negative, one positive. That's a negative. Negative 8 times negative 5. I know 8 times 5 is 40, and two negatives make a positive. Example C, negative 18 divided by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. One negative, one positive is a negative. In example D, negative 25 divided by negative 5. I know 25 divided by 5 is 5, and two negatives make a positive. And here we have 3 times the quantity of negative 6 minus 12. This is an order of operations problem. If you remember, for what we can do inside the parentheses, we could change this to 3 times negative 6 plus negative 12. To make that a little bit easier. Now inside the parentheses we know that negative 6 plus negative 12 is negative 18. A positive times a negative is a negative, and 18 times 3, if we do some mental math, 10 times 3 is 30, 8 times 3 is 24, and 30 plus 24 is 54, leaving us with an answer of negative 54. All right, you've made it through. Good luck on the homework for lessons 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7.